Good evening, friends, and welcome to another late night edition. Well, for us old folks, it's a late night edition of Crime Time with Dutyron and Ed Wallace. We are retired New York City police detectives, and if you like all things true crime related from the police detective's perspective, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you'll get all things Dutyron and Ed Wallace when we go live or upload another video. That was a rookie mistake right there. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I know we're all excited. We have Barbara Butcher, a fan favorite of all of Crime Time with Dutyron's community here. Thank you, Barbara, for being here. We're going to discuss Stephen Smith, the case we have, spoken about, we've covered, we dove into this with Barbara and Ed numerous times. Before we get into it, Ed, how you doing tonight? And welcome home. Welcome back.
Thank you. I'm tired, but I'm good. I'm good. Glad to be back. I missed everybody. I missed the show. Had a great time in Bermuda, and then right from Bermuda back to work. No meal, as they say in our job.
98. You're resuming patrol.
Remember, meal is a privilege.
Yeah. So before we get into it, I have some media that I want to play for you folks, but I want to say thank you to all of the channel members, the Patreon supporters, the subscribers, the folks who positively engage in all of these videos that we do. You guys are what makes this a great place. And Ed, Barbara, and I, we give thanks and praise to you for your friendship, your professionalism that you exhibit in not only just the live chat, but in the comment section down below. You guys are awesome. You ask some great questions, and you're always looking for answers. And to the answers, we bring the professionals on like Barbara and Ed. So I wanted to just say really quickly, Stephen Smith, this case is from 2015, right, Ed? This goes back a long way. It involves a lot of moving parts and a lot of rabbit holes. The Murdaugh family was rumored to be involved and had hands in it. You had the ambulance chasing aspect and theories. We thought Buster at one point was involved in this death of Stephen Smith, which SLED reclassified it as a homicide. Originally a hit and run, but now new evidence and new since that second autopsy, the body was exhumed, and the second autopsy conducted through Sandy Smith, his mom. She hired Ronnie Richter and Mr. Bland, and they went out and got a team of experts to do this autopsy. We're going to get into it. We're going to speak about that with you and Barbara. But I want you to listen to Fitz News. This is a local guy. I believe that Will from Fitz News really puts out the facts. He's not a fluff guy. He's not somebody who's going to try to sell you a song and a dance, or sell you some floodland down in Florida. He's halfway there, but he's not going to do that. So I like what he has to say here. So we're going to take a listen to him, and then we're going to come back on and we're going to talk with Barbara and Ed on this. So let's just take a listen to what Will had to say. This is about 8-9 days ago.
So we're going to start this week with some news on the Murdaugh murders, crime, and corruption front. Although I will say it's still not entirely evident just how connected this story that we're about to talk about is to that Murdaugh murders, crime, and corruption saga. I'm referring, of course, to the 2015 homicide of Stephen Smith of Hampton, South Carolina. Smith's body, of course, found in the middle of Sandy Run Road near Crocketville, South Carolina, the early morning hours of July 8, 2015. This has been a cold case mystery for the last 8 years. However, it's been the last few years where we have seen just an explosion of national and even international interest in the Smith case, especially after it was featured in that Netflix documentary, Murdaugh Murders, A Southern Scandal. But before we get to the questions about the proximity of the Smith case to the Murdaughs, some important developments. As we reported just yesterday, we have been able to confirm that the South Carolina statewide grand jury is indeed investigating Stephen Smith's death as a homicide. They are receiving testimony. They are reviewing evidence. That means subpoenas and warrants have been issued. That also means that Smith family attorney Eric Bland was correct back on March 25th when he spoke with Court TV and indicated that he believed a grand jury had been impaneled in this case. Bland was absolutely right. A grand jury indeed was impaneled. Now, we do not know exactly how far in their deliberations that grand jury is at this point. We do, however, know that the grand jury will be convening this coming week, second full week of June. They will be, again, hearing additional testimony and evidence. Now, what have they heard so far? According to our sources who are close to this process, grand jurors have received evidence which indicates, or according to our sources, proves conclusively that Smith's body was found where he was killed. In other words, that Smith was not killed in another location and brought to Sandy Run Road, but in fact, he died there on the spot where his body was found by that tow driver at 4 a.m. in the morning on July 8th. Now, this is very significant. According to our sources, it's been confirmed not only by state investigators, but also by Dr. Kenneth Kinsey. If you recall, Kinsey, he was one of the star witnesses at the Alec Murdaugh double homicide trial back in March of this year. He was also hired by Smith's family, by attorneys Bland and Ronnie Richter, as they have investigated Smith's homicide. And according to my sources, Kinsey has confirmed that, yes, Stephen Smith, in fact, died where his body was found on that summer morning, nearly 8 years ago. Now, as this case continues to unfold, as my news outlet has previously reported, there are two persons of interest that officers or agents, rather, with the State Law Enforcement Division, rather, have focused in on. Two persons of interest, Patrick Wilson and Sean Conley. These are both 25-year-old young men from Brunson, South Carolina. They lived in the area where this tragedy occurred 8 years ago, and they have been linked to it by none other than Randy Murdaugh. In fact, if you followed our case files back earlier this year, we dumped a ton of case files on the Stephen Smith investigation on our website. You can review that. Just Google Fitz News, Stephen Smith for those. But a ton of case files, and it was abundantly clear from looking at those files that these two persons of interest were the result of Murdaugh direction. In other words, they were on the radar of law enforcement officers due to a tip from the Murdaugh family. Now, we know that Sandy Smith made it abundantly clear her belief that the Murdaughs were involved in the death of her son. She made that abundantly clear in a letter that was sent to the Federal Bureau of Investigation in 2016, in which she pointed the finger at the Murdaughs and specifically at Buster Murdaugh. And that created a buzz that has just grown into a cacophony over the last 7 years. In fact, it got to the point that Buster Murdaugh issued a statement in the weeks after his father's conviction on the double homicide charges and the death of his mom and younger brother. Buster Murdaugh actually came out with a statement denying any involvement, disavowing the rumors related to his alleged involvement in the death of Stephen Smith. And I want to be clear, at this point, none of the investigations into Stephen Smith's death have come anywhere near Buster Murdaugh. Anywhere near, not within a country mile, people. And in fact, one of the things that's a little troubling about this case is when investigators working for Sandy Smith back in 2021, when they determined that there did not appear to be any connection between Buster Murdaugh and this just savage murder, Sandy Smith actually fired him.
I'm going to let it go right there. So a lot of information here. Ed, before we get into it, some of the people who are in the audience that might not know who Barbara is, I would like you to introduce her. I know we should have did that in the beginning, but before she starts speaking on this, I want people to know her extreme credentials.
Okay, folks, for those of you who are new to us, welcome to the family. And as Ron said, Barbara Butcher is a forensic professional that worked with me back in the day on crime scenes with bodies on scene. And she was a part of the first wave of medical legal death investigators that were brought into the New York City Office of Chief Medical Examiner by Dr. Hirsch. Prior to that, they had contracted doctors that would come out to the scenes. And then Dr. Hirsch initiated the medical legal death program, where he hired physician's assistants, which Barbara is, a physician assistant, to come out and do professional death scene investigations alongside someone like me from crime scene. And then after working her way up through the ranks of medical legal death investigator in the medical examiner's office, Dr. Hirsch made her his chief of staff for the New York City Office of Chief Medical Examiner. She has thousands of death scene investigations under her belt. She was part of 9/11 and many other high-profile cases within the city of New York.
Thanks so much, Ed. And thank you, Ron, for having me on.
Barbara, it's a pleasure.
Wait. I forgot one thing. And later on, Barbara would become my boss at the New York City Medical Examiners when we worked together at the Forensic Science Training Program.
And Ed knew that I was going to say that, so that's why he got that out.
No, I had to beat him to that, Barbara. I'm sorry.
And a fine time it was, Ed. A fine time.
It was a great 6 years.
So, Barbara, let me ask you real quick. What findings in a second autopsy could they have come up with to come to this determination? Now, we heard that, Dr. Kinsey, Kenneth Kinsey, made the determination that Stephen Smith was, in fact, murdered at the location where that tow truck driver found him, square in the middle of the road. We showed the crime scene photos briefly, edited versions. How does that happen? Could you walk the audience through how this autopsy could have led them to this?
Sure. Two things happen. One is seeing evidence that was not seen before. And the second thing is interpretation. As we've stressed here before, the medical examiner, the forensic pathologist who does an autopsy, sees the evidence through his lens, through his or her mind and their training and their experience, and then interprets that according to their knowledge. So we could have something very much like that, where the interpretation of evidence is different. But think of something like an injury to the pelvis. There are very specific injuries that occur when a car impacts a person's body. And I'm not saying that I have any knowledge of the autopsy report. I'm giving you a for instance. So if, for instance, he was hit straight on with the brakes not applied, the front of a car would hit him right about in the pelvis. And so if on autopsy they found a shattered pelvis with bone fragments that transected or cut through the femoral arteries, he would bleed to death within a minute, 2 minutes. And therefore, it would be likely that he died upon impact of a vehicle right there on the road. That's the likelihood.
Right.
If a car slows down as they approach someone, if you step on your brakes hard, you'll notice the front of your car, the nose of your car dips downward. And then you get a bumper strike on the back of the legs or the front of the legs. And it's kind of like a wedge-shaped trauma to the bone. So knowing the height of a car bumper for any particular model, and that information is, of course, available online and in various manufacturers' manuals, and then measuring the impact point on a person's legs, you can tell if the car braked before they hit them, if they slowed down, or if they just ran right into a person.
Right.
So,
But in this instance, we heard a lot of people speak about and speculate. And Ed, you talked, highly on this. On the last video we did, there was the conversation about a side view mirror hitting him, and there was also conversation about paint from vehicles. Now, everybody was all over the place with it. We're never going to have everybody on the same page. And as you said, Barbara, we don't have access to the findings. We are left to give our possibilities of what we professionally could see as what they would come up with. But Ed, I wanted to jump to you quickly. Dr. Kinsey, as you heard this Fitz news reporter Will say, he came down with this final finding. And Sandy Smith, when her investigators that she hired in 2021 didn't agree with the fact of the Murdochs being involved, the Murdoch family, she fired them. So I wanted to see and get your thoughts as a crime scene investigator, how he could have came up with this years and years later. He's out there in 2023.
Well, I mean, he was part of a team, so it might not just be his work. He might have utilized the work of the pathologists, and in this case, the re-examination of the body also introduced forensic anthropologists to the forensic experts that were utilized. I don't believe, I'm not sure, but I don't believe I recall seeing anything about a forensic anthropologist being consulted in the first autopsy. But like I said, I'm not sure. I didn't read anywhere that was the case, but now we have this. So we talked about many times Locard exchange principle. Okay. So when, in this case, you have an interaction between a person, maybe a vehicle at a location. Okay. Now, when those things separate, there's going to be an exchange of evidence of that interaction. So there should be some evidence of the vehicle at the scene. There should be some evidence of the vehicle on the victim. There should be some evidence of the victim on the vehicle. And there should be some evidence of the victim at the scene. So all of this has to converge in order for them to make that kind of determination that that was the definitive site of where he succumbed to his injuries right there. So again, we don't have all the evidence. We don't know what they have.
We don't have the vehicle that hit him.
Right. Or if it was a vehicle, remember, there's still talk about this baseball bat. Right. A blue aluminum baseball bat or something like that. Anyhow, but there is talk about a paint chip in a vehicle and so forth and so on. So again, there has to be this nexus that of these three things that came together at that spot where they can definitively say, this is the spot. It wasn't someplace else and then moved here. Wasn't someplace else put in the car and dumped here. They're saying that this is the spot.
Right.
So, Ed, for instance, if we had a evidence of a catastrophic injury to the body consistent with a motor vehicle strike, or the side mirror or such, evidence on the body, such as a paint chip or glass fragment,
Piece of plastic, a side view mirror.
Sure.
Yeah.
a piece of a fender on the body, and then also something from that immediate scene, a piece of gravel driven into his knees as he, was pushed forward. If we had something like that, if we had a three-way nexus, and
Right.
then we had a vehicle that was missing a paint chip or showed some biological evidence from the young man.
Or fabric impressions in the paint from his clothing.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
And these
And
are
that
all
was-
things that we don't have knowledge of, but we're, trying to talk to the audience here and let everybody know that these are possibilities of what they have.
Now, I believe the original autopsy was a copy, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Cause unknown, pending police investigation.
How many autopsies have you been involved in, Barbara, where it involved homicide, where someone was murdered? I know those numbers. I just don't like to throw them out there and get scolded.
Well, personally, I've investigated 5,500 deaths that I individually investigated. Of them, 680 were homicides. Then, in addition, I saw the autopsies every day. Those were just my cases where I went out and, checked it out. But every single day, I'd see 2-3 homicide autopsies. Don't forget, I was back in the day when we were getting, was it Ed, 2,450 homicides a year.
Yeah, during the
In
crack
New York
wars
City.
in 1990s. Yes.
1990, 1991. It was 2,200 in 91.
Yeah,
Yep.
we, folks, don't get mad at me, but we used to have a morbid sense of humor and say things like, people are just dying to meet us.
That's right. Business is good and we're thriving. And we had all kinds of morbid, terrible jokes. And we'd
That's
say
our
things.
That's the way we coped.
Yeah.
That's the way we coped. Yep.
And Barbara, isn't it true that you were the second woman hired as a death investigator in the New York City Medical Examiner's office?
Yeah, and the first one in Manhattan to make it more than 3 months. There was a woman hired before me, but I don't know if it was the guys bragging on her or the cases that just drove her right out the door.
She didn't last very
'Cause
long.
yeah, because don't forget you guys were tough on a girl back in those days, the early 90s.
Things were different. Yes.
Showing up at a scene, it was a different day. You had
Oh,
to
yeah.
prove yourself very quickly to avoid, being pushed aside.
I recommended a PA do an internship at OCME, and she lasted 1 day.
Mhm.
What does OCME stand for, Ed?
Office of Chief Medical Examiner.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. Some of the people in the audience, maybe outside the country, they might have been scratching their head on that one and saying, "Wait a minute, what is that?"
If they Googled ACME, OCME, it's also an Italian tile company.
Well, listen, Barbara, we're getting comments like this in the comment section. Dawn Marie says Barbara is a freaking rock star.
Oh, that's
You
so
guys, you guys don't know the half of it. She is a freaking rock star. The title of this live stream is Stephen Smith, the Stephen Smith case, and what the dead know, with author Barbara Butcher. And it brings me to my next part and next segment here in this live interactive broadcast is Barbara's book. Her Blood, Sweat, and Tears is being released tomorrow. That's June 20th. She's going to be doing a book signing on Wednesday down in Manhattan. We're going to get into that in a few minutes. But Barbara, I wanted to ask you and jump right into this. So many death investigations over the course of your time. What was your motivation to write this book, and how did we get here today?
I think COVID was the final push. For years now, I've had stories of strange cases of homicides, suicides, accidents, all kinds of deaths, and all kinds of different lives too. Because in New York City, you see everything, absolutely everything, from people living in caves beneath the tunnels of Manhattan, or in Fifth Avenue penthouses surrounded by art and gold and jewels and things like that. So I had so many stories to tell. And then along came COVID, during which my consulting business kind of tanked. And it occurred to me that I might die from COVID. So I thought maybe I better get these stories out right now. And I started writing. And then it was like such a relief to be able to finally tell these stories. And part of it is getting the feelings out. Now, you guys know better than anyone what it's like to work as a first responder or a last responder and see constant horror every day, to be in a world of disaster and death and decay. It takes a toll on you.
Mhm.
And writing this book, I was able to get out so many feelings and talk a lot about what it was like to be me in those moments. I don't mind telling you, it was rough. And you guys know that too. And especially when 9/11 hit, my God, did it get bad. So one of the driving motives to write this book is to let people know what it's like for police officers, emergency EMTs, firemen, ER personnel, and yes, medical legal death investigators and forensic anthropologists. It's we're strong people, and we do a hell of a good job doing things that no one else can do. So I'd like to see some kind of a national awareness of we need help.
Yeah.
We just need help.
Go ahead, Ed.
It's 100% accurate. When we're born, it's like God gives us a backpack, right? And over your life, that backpack starts to fill up with a lot of things, issues, problems, and it keeps building, and it keeps building, and it keeps building. And there's going to come a time, there's going to be a breaking point. Okay. And the thing is, you need to recognize that and go get help. Okay. Before that breaking point happens. Okay. Now, in my entire career in forensics, 15 years in the NYPD crime scene unit, you know, how many times we had to go sit down and talk to a therapist or psych services? Once. After
Wow.
9/11. After 9/11.
Yeah.
They sat us down after all was said and done. And, you know, they were there at 9/11. They were there in the mess hall, the therapists, and walking around and talking to people, trying to get a feel for people and see what's going on. The mental health professionals were there. But after 9/11, as a policy, we had to sit down and speak to them and at psych services. And I said to them, you know, I spent 15 years in crime scene. You know, I have amassed so many crime scene investigations that are as heinous can be. And the only time you call on us to take a look at us or to see if we're okay is after this major event. This is something you should be doing on a regular basis through all the members of the service, not just to people like crime scene investigators, homicide detectives, sex crimes, or whatever the case. Okay. You know, to keep an eye on us, to make sure we're okay. Okay. And, you know, and the psychologist that I was talking to said, you know, that's a great point. That's a great point. You know, maybe somebody should do something about that. And I said, and who should that be?
When I became director of investigations, I went to my boss. I said, you know, Chief, there's a lot of drinking, gambling, and depression and anxiety, and maybe it's time we got some help. Nah, we're strong people, Barbara. We can take it. We do this because we can. No, we got ruined. We got ruined. So
stigma too, that, you know, that you were weak if you needed to go and speak to somebody. I remember when Kevin Gillespie was shot and killed, my squad member in 1993, 96 when that happened. We all were lost. My whole squad was lost. Guys were drinking and dousing themselves with alcohol, coming into roll call, reeking of alcohol after this. And nobody would speak to the department psychologist or anybody off the job or on the job, because there was that stigma that was attached to you that, oh, this one's weak, can't handle it.
That's right.
So, you had to, I mean, I had my wife here who was my, you know, she was my support system. I would talk to her. And I had a couple of close friends, thank God, off the job that I could speak to. It was nobody on the job. So that was my release for, you know, very stressful situations. And after September 11th, like you said, Ed, they kind of made it an atmosphere of like it was okay to speak to somebody, and it didn't go any further. Like they just, if you needed to speak to someone, you could do that. But then and only then was it, like you said, Ed, it took buildings crumbling before us for them to say, okay, you could. You know.
I think the shockwave really hit the emergency response community after the Oklahoma City bombing. Because of the amount of suicides that occurred post-event, post-incident in the emergency response community, fire, EMS, law enforcement, medical death investigators, medical examiners, nurses, doctors. There was a huge, tremendous amount of suicides from people that responded and dealt with that particular situation, that particular heinous crime.
And that was particularly heinous because of the kids. There was the nursery school there.
The daycare center, right?
And I'll never forget it because it was my birthday, April 19th. So, difficult. Barbara, in your book, you speak about some, you know, tough topics to tackle and tough things to put to pen and paper about recovering from alcoholism and so forth. You know, that's a tough way to start in that going, you know, from that to go into this field. How difficult is that for you to kind of stay, you know, like how tough was that, Barbara?
You know, I got sober about 1.5 years before I started the job. And so I was still kind of shaky.
Yeah.
off my feet.
Talk about triggers.
And oh yeah, talk about triggers. And it was difficult. I won't lie to you. There are times when the guys would say to me on a particularly bad case, detectives would say, "Barbara, we're going to go out for a drink. You want to join us?" Hell yeah, I wanted to join them with all my heart. I wanted to talk with them. I wanted to drink with them, and I wanted to forget what we had just seen, but I couldn't. So instead, I remember going up on a rooftop once. We were doing a case of a young girl raped, murdered, and set on fire in the projects. And they're just like, "Come on, Barbara, we got to go. We got to get a drink." I was like, "No, I'll just stay here for a minute." And I just looked up at the sky and said, "I need help on this one." And I didn't drink that night. And 30-something years later, I still haven't taken a drink. But there were many, many times when I was tempted. Thank you. Thank you.
Because your help is not at the bottom of a bottle.
That's right. That would never, ever make it any better. Just numb it for a few minutes.
But just being sober a year and a half and going into that industry and that field is, for someone who's not battling or fighting any vices, it's a difficult thing, to see.
Yeah. Well, there were other vices. Don't forget.
I know.
There were definitely other vices.
I don't want to give the whole shop away because I did read part of the book.
Oh, yeah.
You can't get in any trouble for that, right? You shared a little bit of the book with me in the beginning. So I want to just show from BarbaraButcherAuthor.com. So I'm going to link this. I believe it is linked in the description. It says coming out in June, but here we are. It is June tomorrow, the 20th. The book will be officially released. You can buy it on Amazon. I have it linked here in the description. You could buy it at Barnes & Noble. I purchased 10 copies, and they're going to be coming out, and we're going to be giving them away to you, the viewers. And I may actually test I might give 2 books away here tonight. All you have to do is put hashtag Barbara in the chat. Hashtag Barbara will get you an opportunity and an entry, but don't do it yet because I still have to set that up. Barbara, how long did this book take in the writing? Oh, what's Ed showing there? Hold on, let me get that up.
Oh, his shipment arriving tomorrow.
Okay, there it is.
I just got it as we were talking.
Excellent.
And of course, Ed is in the book. Of course.
I'm going to keep the 2 of you on the screen. Barbara, can you just tell some of the folks who are chomping at the bit to get this book? You described when you started during COVID, but how long did it take you to write this and get it all together?
A little over 2 years. And then, there's always rewrites and edits, but it did take a good long while, 2 years of solid writing. And then I had to cut back because it was just getting too long. I've got too many cases, and maybe there's a part 2. I don't know, but it was a work of love. And long ago, when I saw one of my earliest autopsies during training, it was that of an 8-year-old girl who had been raped and smothered. And I said to the forensic pathologist, "Jackie, how do you stand this? How do you do this every day and then go home and live?" And she said, "Barbara, the only way you're going to save yourself is by, when you leave here, surround yourself with things of beauty, art and love and food and music and dance. Anything creative will keep you going. It'll keep you alive." And God knows she was right, because I think that writing this book was an act of creativity that brought me back from the point you'll see in the book where things got a little crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and Ed.
Yeah. I get hyper scientific, when I see such horror, dismemberments or tortured deaths of a pregnant woman lying face down on her belly with her noose around her neck, and every time she moved her feet, it would strangle her. I mean, it's the things that we've seen, right? Mm-hmm. And so I would get super hyper technical into the forensics, and I just keep telling myself, take solace in the fact that you're helping. Take solace in the fact that we're helping this decedent. Whether the decedent was a good person or a bad person, that doesn't mean anything to me. Nobody deserves to die like this. Nobody deserves any of this. Okay, we're not supposed to treat each other this way. Okay, so I take solace in the fact that I was able to help my the decedent's family, my community, my nation.
That's right. That's right. At least we were able to do something.
Yeah. And people describe it as doing God's work, right? And that's a fancy way of saying this, but it is true in a sense that we're out there doing the job that most people want to run away from. You know, who wants to handle a dead human body? Who wants to try to investigate and look into what caused the death of a human? It's not a job that people jump at. You know, even my friend, his son's a funeral director. 30-year-old, 35-year-old kid, and everybody's got to start somewhere, right? And a lot of the folks who come on to the NYPD, some of them that are coming from the funeral business, and I met quite a few funeral directors in the NYPD. As a matter of fact, one of them was my instructor in the academy, and I was like, how do you segue into this?
My CO, my lieutenant back in the day, Hackett, was a family of funeral home directors and embalmers and so forth.
Hackett and Butcher. Oh boy.
Oh yeah, there's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a made-for-TV movie right there.
Well,
Butcher, Slaughter, and Hackett.
Yeah. How much digging did you get with the last name Butcher in the business?
Oh, plenty. Yeah. But I think the guys really enjoyed it. They'd say, Dr. Butcher's here. Now they know I'm not a doctor, but it just sounds so good, Dr. Butcher. But there was, I did have a student with me for a while. I often took out medical residents or people in training on cases, and his name was John Slaughter. So I loved showing up to the scene. They'd say, yeah, excuse me, who are you? Pull out my badge. Butcher and Slaughter from the ME. How you got it? What do you got for me, boys?
Can't make that stuff up.
Nope.
In the first chapter, in the early readings of your book, you talked about some of the gentlemen that would drive you guys around from job to job. And you talked about one in particular who was a total gentleman who would carry your bags for you and so forth, and never let you go into the projects and some of the shady spots where you'd have to go to do your death investigations. Do you want to talk a little bit about him? Because I thought that was a great story that you started out the book with.
There's sometimes we forget, and I forget too, that it's a team. We're all on a team. And the man that mostly drove me to cases most of the time was Everett Wells. And Mr. Wells was a gentleman of the highest order. He wasn't highly educated. He wasn't, the wealthiest man in the world. He was working a tough job, but he made it a professional job. He made it that he was going to do his absolute best to protect me, to assist me, and to give the family the sense of respect that they needed. When he showed up at a scene, he'd take off his hat. He was a gentleman of the highest order, and he knew all the history of New York City, which was just so good. And I love Mr. Wells. I just loved him.
He was a class act.
Wasn't he? He was a great man.
Yeah. Is he still around?
I can still see his face.
Yep.
Yeah.
You still keep in touch with him? Is he still around?
No, he's passed on. He was an older gentleman, and just a wonderful man. And, I had two great men that I learned from. Dr. Charles Hirsch, the chief medical examiner, was my mentor. And he taught me everything about forensics and how to be professional. And Mr. Wells taught me humility and working hard and just love for people. So they were two very different, but two very great men.
And he certainly didn't teach you how to eat properly, right? You guys had a lot of fast food with Mr. Wells.
Yeah, we lived at McDonald's and, donut shops, because the radio back in those days, it was going off all the time, As soon as he'd say, now, Barbara, come on now, on Randy on the day shift, he takes me out to a nice cafe for lunch. I say, come on, Mr. Wells, midnight to 8, the night watch, we're not going to any cafes. We're going to go to McDonald's on 125th Street, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. Hey, I wanted you to talk a little bit about the book signing, which is coming up on Wednesday, the June 21st, 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. mysterious bookshop in Tribeca, 58 Warren Street in New York. Do you want to talk a little bit about what the
Yeah.
history of that place? Because it looks fascinating.
Yeah, if any of your fans are here in New York City and you want to come down on Wednesday evening, just 6 to 7 p.m., I'm going to be interviewed by mystery writer Kate White and signing books. And it's just it'll be a fun evening. And if anybody's in the neighborhood, come on in and meet me. I'd love to meet some of your fans, Ron. These are fantastic people. And I want to say something about citizen sleuths. Increasingly, we rely on crowdsourcing answers. We've got great technology and investigation. We've got great detectives who go out and talk to the victims, perpetrators, and solve cases. But citizen sleuths like your fans who bring up new ideas, fresh ideas, who keep things in the forefront so that homicides are not forgotten about, they make an important and valuable contribution to the sense of criminal justice. And I want to give a shout out to my sister, Carolyn Hammer, a citizen sleuth from way back. And she's still working on the John Benet Ramsey case. So,
Wow. Hey, Carolyn.
but it's in the family.
Welcome. Yes, welcome. You know, the citizen sleuths are the silent heroes because they are, as you said, they keep the heartbeat of some of these cases in the forefront. And they talk about them, they share them, they speculate, they, spitball, as Bill Cannon says. And sometimes some of the things that they key in on or home in on are spot on. So kudos to all of the citizen sleuths that are out there. You guys are, again, what keeps us going. And we love to educate. And that's what Crime Time with Dutyron has evolved into. I started out with 0 subscribers. We're at 167,000 thanks to great people like you and Ed and some of the wonderful professionals that we bring on through kind of cross-pollinating our Rolodexes and sharing some of the knowledge of some of the people like Dr. Murray Marks. Ed's brought in folks from Australia, right? We had the bug doctor come on with us, Ed. That was great. That was an unbelievable live.
Ian, yes.
Yeah, Ian Dodura.
Mm-hmm.
It just so many fascinating guests. And like I could call Barbara up and say, hey, do you got an odontologist? Do you have somebody, a dentist? And she, connected us with our forensic odontologist. It was a great show. Barbara, this backdrop looks unbelievable. I want to put it back on because is this where you'll be signing in this location right here?
Yeah.
You're going to have to clear that desk off, though. There's too many books on there.
Yeah, I imagine they've got a little area in the front with something a little bit more conducive to sitting down and signing a book. Yeah. But if anybody can stop by, it's from 6 to 7 o'clock Wednesday evening at the Mysterious Bookshop on Warren Street. It'll be fun.
It's going to be a great time. And Barbara's going to sign away until her hands can't sign anymore. So we're looking forward to that.
Thank God for you guys.
I want to give away some books. So let me get to there's only 65 people who entered in for a chance to get 2 books. Everybody that's just joining, look, there's almost 800 people here. Hashtag Barbara. I don't know why it's not going through. Maybe I didn't do this right.
Oh, no, I see it. I see hashtags in the comments.
It's starting to go up now. So we're at 67. I want more people to get a chance to have a chance to win. So put hashtag Barbara. Make sure you spell it right. And you will have an opportunity we're going to give 2 of them away tonight because we don't have a great deal of time. You're going to have to bear with me because I have to get them first. Their shipment I got notified they're shipping them just as Ed did. I ordered mine directly from Barnes & Noble. And I got to get Barbara to sign them. So there's going to be a couple of little delays. So again, Barbara in the chat, hashtag Barbara, look at it. It's lighting up like a wildfire right now. this is how many people are so anxious to get your book. And I'm going to ask everybody. I'm going to go full screen. You're going to get a little bit of Dutyron. Hopefully, people don't go away. I'm going to ask you guys all to please. Barbara does not get paid from us to come here and give her time. She is somebody who gives us knowledge and gives us all of the information that we need in some of these most important cases that we cover. I'm asking you guys kindly, if you can afford to buy the book, go on to Amazon, which is linked in the description, authorbarbarabutcher.com, dutyron.com, barnesandnoble.com. Go and buy her book. I think it's around $28. It's going to be the best $28 you've ever spent. And I'm asking you guys to please, I don't ask much from anybody, but I'm asking you to please go over and purchase Barbara's book. If you do that, I will forever be in your debt, and I'll love you to death. So thank you, guys.
And if you love listening to Barbara's voice, get the audio version.
Oh, yeah. You know what?
Oh, that's right. I did it. Yeah.
I might do a members-only live stream where we play the entire audio of that of your with the book, and maybe you could join us for members only, and we could talk maybe about some of the moments in the book. I know that might take a while.
Yeah.
I have to do it in a couple of parts, but
Sure.
I would like to do that. Would you be down for that, Barbara?
Hell yeah. And I'll do anything with you guys.
All right.
By the way, if someone can't afford the book, please get it at your local library and read it and just and spread the word.
Yeah.
If you like it. If you don't, just don't say anything.
Christina K says hers is on the way. Guys and girls, by a show of hands in the chat, if you ordered or if you pre-ordered the book, put a number 1 in the chat. If you again, if your money's tight and you can't afford it, like Barbara said, you could go to a library and read it. You can enter for a chance to win. I have 8 more to give away. We're going to only give away two of these books tonight, but I have 8 more I'm going to give away. So there's always a chance that you could get them here. But I see a lot of ones in the chat, Barbara. So we're live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and I think LinkedIn. If we're not on LinkedIn, oh, maybe not. I didn't do LinkedIn because LinkedIn, you can only have a title of 60 characters or less, and they don't let you. Then this one, I think, went to almost 70. So we're not on LinkedIn, but Barbara is on LinkedIn. So some of the people are saying I got the Audible. Very cool.
Good.
I haven't heard the Audible yet, but I definitely want to listen to it. I have Amazon Prime, so I might even be able to get it, for a deal. I don't know. But
Ron, I just saw somebody mention something about that they ordered the book, but they also ordered the biography of Barbara Butcher. I got to tell you, that's a fake. It's an AI pirated thing.
So don't buy that.
No, don't buy that. It's a weird thing.
Let's get this clear: there is no official biography of Barbara Butcher.
There is not. No, there's
Only what Ed and I say.
Exactly. Whatever you say is true. Anything else is nonsense.
Okay.
And, they literally took my book, fed it into an AI, whatever they put it in. I don't know what an AIG is. And it rewrote the book and said it's my biography. So it says things like, Barbara grew up in the little town of Evergreen, where it was beautiful and sunny and warm, but yet she was drawn to the dark side of death. I'm like, what the hell kind of nonsense is that?
That's corny as hell. Oh boy.
No, I'm a Brooklyn girl.
For somebody to do that. Wow. That's desperado right there. All right. So listen, I don't know how this is humanly possible, but we only have 186 entries. Ed, does that seem copacetic?
No, we can do better than that.
We can do much better than that. I see 186 and the thing is updating live unless there's a glitch in StreamYard, but this is the hashtag. So again, I'm encouraging you, if you didn't put this hashtag, look, see, it just went up to 187.
Come on, folks, you got to represent.
Let's get this thing up to at least to match what we have here, 779 people. It can't be that people just don't want this book.
It's the algorithm.
That's absolutely absurd. Anyways, don't worry. There'll be more chances. It's going up. We're up to almost 200. Once it gets over 200, I'll draw one name, and then I think everybody else will get excited.
All right, let me know. I got the spinning wheel sound effect.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
Barbara, do you have anything additional that you want to add to before we close up in another 10 minutes? You know, I know there's a lot we could talk. Probably do this for an hour or two just about the book, but anything that you want to add into about the book and so forth?
Yeah, there is. I'm going to ask for forgiveness in advance. Now, you know, as Ed mentioned, we had a pretty dark humor that helped us to cope. And a lot of my humor was directed at the police. So, and you know, I love cops. I come from a cop family and I love NYPD, but a lot of my jokes were at their expense. For instance, things like, like I saw a young rookie guarding the door of an open apartment. And I asked Mr. Wells, here, hold my bag and my jacket. I'm going to go in there and pull something on him. And I went up. I said, hi, officer. How are you? He said, fine. How can I help you, ma'am? I said, I understand someone just died in a rent-controlled apartment. And I was wondering if I could take a look. It's so hard to find anything affordable in New York City. And he said, lady, come on. Come on. How could you? No, lady, please. I said, come on, officer. Just one little peek. Is it a 2-bedroom? I'd really like to get a great apartment like this. And he was like, oh, honey, come on. I said, please, please, please. He said, all right, just a peek. And I pulled out my badge. I said, all right, Butcher from the ME. How you doing?
Busted.
Wow.
So there were plenty of those things. So I ask your forgiveness in advance. Cops were the butt of my jokes lots of times, and that was payback for all the times they got me.
That is awesome. I love that story.
I would have said, you know what? I got a room for you. Or a new apartment. Yeah, it's in the nut ward.
Janet says only New Yorkers will get this one.
That's right. Yeah, no other city has as few apartments as we have that are even reasonably affordable.
Yeah,
definitely a New York joke.
Amy's laughing her ass off. Tina King says that's hilarious. Little One says I love it. Awesome. We're up to 223 folks. 223 brave folks got into the pool here, and I'm going to put it on the screen, and let's let her rip. Let's give a book away. What do you say, Barbara?
Let's do it.
You tell Ed when to go. Oh, he did it. Ready.
Hold on. I'll start it over. Ready?
Barbara, you tell Ed when to go because it's your book.
Okay.
Let me know.
Go. Stop.
Chosen Rosen wins a book. Chosen Rosen, congratulations. You have won a free signed copy of What the Dead Know by Barbara Butcher, author. Send me your address on Dutyron.com. Go over to Dutyron.com.
Johnson, you're fired. Why?
What's going on here, Ed? What are you doing?
I don't know. I went from spinning prize to Johnson, you're fired.
All right, so that's our first one. Let me write that down. Chosen Rosen book. Barbara, you better get your hand ready because you're going to be doing a lot of signing here.
I know, over the next couple of days. Yeah.
Oh,
and I'll write whatever he wants in it, you know.
Yeah. So send your
reason.
Yes, send your address over to Dutyron.com and we will get the book out. All right, let's see. Maybe we'll wait another minute or two for some more folks to enter. I see it's still increasing and swelling in number. So I want to give a couple more folks. If you're just joining in, we have in the beginning of this show, we did cover Stephen Smith. The recent turn of events in that case, grand jury has been convened, and perhaps indictments or charges will be coming down in the near future. And they determined through the team that Stephen Smith was, in fact, killed in the spot where he was discovered by the tow truck driver. And Barbara and Ed were kind enough to give us some of their professional thoughts and opinions on that situation. But now we're here in the second part, and we're giving away books. We're giving away a book or two for Barbara Butcher, the What the Dead Know. So let's take this. We're almost at 2:31. All right, Ed, you got your thing ready? Your thing
Ready.
Hold on, Barbara. You tell him when to let it rip, and then this does it automatically, so I can't stop it for the stuff. All right.
All right, Ed, hit it.
Ed. Congratulations, Gene. Send me a little note on dutyron.com. Need your address. Hopefully you are in the United States. Barbara, if it's out of town, you're going to pick up the cost on that one. Just kidding. Just kidding. All right. So we gave 2 of our 10 books. We still have 8 more that we're going to give away. Congratulations, Gene and Chosen Rosen, for winning signed copies of Barbara's book, What the Dead Knows. Ed, do you have anything that you might want to add into this conversation about the book or anything about Stephen Smith before we close up? Because everybody loves you, Ed.
Well, I can tell you, having written several books myself, it is, as Barbara said, very hard work. And although my books are textbooks, and there's no money in textbooks. If you want to make money, you got to make money in true crime novels, like Patricia Cornwell, our good friend Barbara.
Oh, yes, our very good friend.
Okay, and then when you get established in what they call police procedural genre of book writing, they make pretty decent money. Okay, and they get a following, and then the books turn into movies and television shows, and you know who knows where it goes from there.
Yep.
Everybody has a book in them.
Yeah. Hey, I want to take a couple of questions. You're right, Ed. Everybody definitely has a book in them, but not everyone's brave enough to put it on paper and pen it, Rachel Carter says, #Barbara, will you ever write a fiction series?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I've already started my next book, which is a novel, and it is based on a true case. But this case is so baffling and so strange that it deserves to be a novel so that we can explore every possible. It has no ending. This mystery was never solved. So that's what I want to do, is open up all the possible solutions to it. So I'm going to write it as a novel.
Awesome.
It'll be fun.
Nice.
Yeah, look forward to that. Anybody that has any questions in the chat, I'm now scanning through the chat, and I want to say thank you for everyone who is joining, who watches the replay. Barbara, if you see anything that jumps out to you, I'd love to
Sure, I
highlight
do.
it.
Hannah Banana wants to know about my time with Ed. Oh, God, Hannah, he was a devil. What a devil. The students loved him.
Don't kiss and tell now.
No, no, Ed was fantastic.
Worry
to
about
work
getting in
with.
trouble with the missus, right?
No, I mean a devil in that he was, charming.
He's a handsome
Just
man.
yeah, he's a charming guy, which I think you can tell. But the people that came from around the country to attend our forensic academy, run by Ed, and they just love him. When I go to speak out in Vegas, and I'm going down to Mississippi next week, people always ask me, "Do you still have that academy?" I said, "No, it's gone. Federal funding dried up." Well, what about Ed? What about Ed? Where's Ed now? Ed's traveling the world teaching other people about crime scene investigations. So he's continuing to teach people, to train people, and to bring up a new generation of great crime scene investigators.
Hey, Barbara, I got a good story. Anecdotally, 2 weeks ago, 2 of our students from the forensic science training program from Dallas came up to New York City. Now, let me give you the backstory. So they were selected individually. One was from the Dallas Medical Examiner's Office, and one was from Dallas PD as a crime scene investigator. Now, they knew each other back home in Dallas, but they became more friendly with each other at our training course. And they would go back home and establish a relationship and then get engaged. And then I got a wedding invitation. And my wife and I flew down to Dallas for a real Texas hoedown wedding. And it was great. And they would, they're still married, have a child in common, and together rather. And they, the son is Gabe, and they brought Gabe up this past 2 weeks ago to New York. They called me up and they said, hey, we're coming up. When I go down there, I touch base with them and say, hey, I'm going to be in Dallas. And then we get together, go to dinner. So that's what happened here. So I picked them up at the airport. I drove them to their hotel in Manhattan. And then later that night, we all went out to dinner as a family. It was great.
That's wonderful. So not only did we teach people about death, but we also brought together love.
We were matchmakers. That's right.
Yes, absolutely.
And here's one more story. So one of our students, a young death investigator from Jacksonville, Florida, his name is Ian. And I took a liking to him immediately because I love the name, because my oldest son is Ian. But this kid was so young. I mean, he looked like he could be in high school when he showed up for the training. I had to ask him for ID to see how old he was. Right? And so he and I became good friends over the years. I would call him Junior. He would call me Pops. Right, because he's so young and I was so old. Anyhow, so he calls me up. We stayed in touch. He calls me up. He says, "Hey, guess what I did?" I said, "What?" He goes, "I put in an application for the New York City Office of Chief Medical Examiner's death investigator position."
Wow.
I said, "Really? You're going to leave Jacksonville and come here?" He goes, "Yeah, I got an interview." I goes, "Okay, when's the interview?" And he gave, I said, "All right, forget about your hotel. You're staying at my house." So I went and picked him up. I brought him to my home. So he's my adopted Philippine son named Ian. And he calls me Pops, and we get together for the holidays and everything. And his family's down there and whatever. So I drove him to his interview at the medical examiner's office, and he got the job. And, he went home. Wow. He packed his things and came up January just as COVID was starting up. And my wife and I went up there in Manhattan, unpacked him, got his apartment all squared away. And he started working for the medical examiners just as COVID hit. And then all hell hit the fan, and those guys were going and gals were going 24/7, 365 without much rest, because they were on that emergency chart dealing with all these bodies in the first wave of COVID here in New York City.
Yeah. Hundreds of dying a day.
But he's still here.
Yeah,
he's still here working.
That's what I was going to ask you. Is he still here? It's funny, Ed. You bring up these stories of the good things that you do and that cops do, and it just makes my heart warm, because I love these stories. You told me about when you were going to pick up the first person to be picking him up from the airport. I said to myself, "What a good guy! What a good person." So this is great stuff. I have the same problem, Barbara, with the Crime Time with Dutyron subscribers. They were asking for months. This is months. This is going on since the first of the year. Where's Ed? What happened to him? Is he okay? And we have the women who are nurturing and caring, and they want to know, is Ed okay? He coughed a little extra on that last live stream. So everybody loves you, Ed. You're just a likable, lovable guy. Again, this whole thing of service, this is, we're public servants, and we're out there doing this job to serve the public and to get answers for people. So it's amazing. Lieutenant Pete Pranzo, who's a great friend of ours, he's an NYPD crime scene, street crime retired lieutenant, and him and his wife, Richella, are always here in the chat. Pete put in a question way before we started these stories here. So he asks, in your time, Barb, what was the busiest murder precinct that you can recall? Thank you, Pete.
Hey, Pete, how are you? For me, it was the 3-4 precinct, the tip of Manhattan, Washington Heights, Inwood. That was our busiest time for me in Manhattan. But the real action was happening in the South Bronx and in Brooklyn.
Brooklyn North.
Well,
Yeah.
I have to say, Barbara, during that time period, it was always a contest between the 3-4 and the 7-5
Yep.
in Brooklyn North. So, Brownsville, Brooklyn, and Washington Heights, Manhattan. Those two precincts were going at it every year to see who would have the highest homicide numbers.
Yep.
And I gotta tell you, we had the on New Year's Eve, there was always the first death pool that we had. And again, this brings back, what you said earlier in the show. It's our way of coping, right? It's not disrespect. It's not to be nasty or anything. But we would, when I worked on patrol, we would have the bets of who and what precinct would have the first murder of the new year. And 7-5, a lot of times won, but the Bronx was always hopping too.
Speaking of the humor, right? We had a radio station that was a news station here on AM. It was called 1010 Wins. And their motto used to be 1010 wins. You give us 10 minutes, we'll give you the world.
You give us 22 minutes, we'll give you the world.
Right. Well, no, 10 minutes. But anyhow, and then the 7-5 precinct took that and says, 7-5 precinct, you give us 10 minutes, we'll give you a homicide.
That's right.
And I literally would be on the streets in the 7-5 precinct processing a crime scene, and I hear my next one go off a couple blocks away. And it was like the OK Corral every night down there.
Yep. Those were crazy, crazy days.
Oh, man. Sometimes we didn't see the inside of an office in an 18-hour shift. She just kept going. And then we'd have to call for supplies to be run out to us because we ran out of things.
Like gloves.
Yeah.
And you run out of gloves, you're in trouble.
Gloves and bags.
Unless, like Dr. Tibert. I don't know if you remember him.
Oh, Monsieur.
Yes, Monsieur Tibert. One of the original docs before, trained MLIs took over, who did not use gloves while examining a body.
And I would yell at him all the time. You know what he said to me? Monsieur, you have to die of something.
Wow. All right, here's the book. This is the cover. What the Dead Know by Barbara Butcher. She's here, yours truly. You could start ordering it live. You can do it tonight, still pre-order, but tomorrow, stroke of midnight here, it'll be available for throwing it in your cart and checking out and getting it. Barbara, thank you so much for taking an hour out. You got interviews and everything going on all week long. And your book signing will be on Wednesday night from 6 to 7.
That's right.
If you guys are in the area, we are going to put that down in the link in the description of this video. Hope everyone will come out and see Barbara. You get a chance. Will you be shaking hands and signing babies?
Yeah. Hugging, kissing, you name it. I'll do it.
All right.
No shaking babies. No shaking babies.
No shaking babies. No.
Just
and
like Talladega Nights. He was just signing everybody, just signing foreheads and whatever.
And two of my friends will be there. I see they're on the feed tonight on the comments. Tom Titone and Carl Capotorto, one of the stars of The Sopranos, our favorite all-time show, and a great TV writer. So they're on the comments tonight, and they'll be there with me Wednesday night at the bookstore, Mysterious Bookshop.
I got my one and only motor vehicle speeding violation racing home on a Sunday to see The Sopranos from a New Jersey trooper.
You didn't tell him what you were doing?
I did. I thought he would appreciate it. No, he's giving me a summons.
Yeah.
Well, thanks to those two gentlemen for being here and supporting you, Barbara, and for all the great work that they've done as well. I can't thank you enough for everything that you've done and that you will continue to do here on Crime Time with Dutyron. You are a superhero, a superstar for us. And we can't thank you enough for the time and effort that you put into educating our audience on death investigations.
Thank you, Ron and Ed. I love you guys. I love being on the show. Thank you so much for the privilege and opportunity.
Yes, love is mutual and respect right back. Hey, I want to thank everyone for watching the replay, everybody who's tuned in here in the live chat. I encourage you to leave questions for Ed, Barbara, and myself down below in the comments section. We'll be live during the course of the week covering all different types of cases. There's been a lot of movements in the Harmony Montgomery case. We're going to be covering a lot of different stories during the course of the week. That's myself, and hopefully Ed will be around. And if he's not, we understand. We love you, Ed. We know that, you know, lots of stuff going on. You got a lot of work that you're doing, but we're going to be covering these cases going forward. So on behalf of Barbara Butcher, author, What the Dead Know, Ed Wallace, and myself, I wish everybody a good night. And we're going to stand by for the cop team. We can't have a live stream without Kara, Oscar, and Popeye. That's Ed's dog, my bird, who's right here listening to this. He's been whistling throughout the whole show, and and Oscar, my 15-year-old little hot dog. So good night, guys. Thanks for joining.
Good night, everyone.
Stay safe.
Safe.